The Unsent Confession, Chapter 1, The Shattered Illusion. San Francisco, California, shimmered under a melancholic gray sky, mirroring the desolation in Claire Davis's heart. At 60, Claire was a widow, her world abruptly truncated by the sudden, cruel hand of fate. Her husband, Daniel Davis, had died of an unexpected heart attack, leaving behind a chasm in her life that felt insurmountable. For 35 years, Daniel had been her anchor, her confidant, her laughter, her love. He was the perfect husband, a devoted father to their only son, Michael. Their marriage had been a tapestry woven with threads of unwavering trust, shared dreams, and quiet contentment. Or so Claire believed. The funeral passed in a haze of polite condolences and hushed whispers. Claire moved through it mechanically, her grief a leaden weight in her chest. Days bled into weeks, each moment a stark reminder of Daniel's absence. She clung to her memories, to the comforting illusion of their perfect life, a fragile shield against the crushing reality of loss. Then, one rain-soaked afternoon, the mail arrived. Among the sympathy cards and bills, there was a plain, cream-colored envelope. No return address, just her name, written in an elegant, unfamiliar hand. The envelope felt unusually thick, as if containing more than just paper. A faint tremor of unease ran through Claire as she opened it. Inside, nestled amongst a few folded sheets of stationery, was a small folded piece of dark blue fabric, a child's sock, impossibly tiny, and a single dried crimson rose, its petals brittle with age. And then the photograph, a Polaroid, slightly faded, Daniel looking younger, relaxed, beaming, his arm around a beautiful woman with striking auburn hair and a gentle smile. And between them, a little boy, no older than 5, with Daniel's mischievous eyes and the woman's bright, warm smile. Claire's breath hitched. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. This wasn't right. It couldn't be right. Daniel, with another woman, another child? The image was a violent affront to everything she believed. Her eyes fell upon the letter, written in the same elegant script as the envelope. It was long, handwritten, the ink bleeding slightly in places, as if the writer's tears had fallen on the page. It began with an apology, then plunged into a confession that ripped through Claire's carefully constructed world like a hurricane. Dear Mrs. Davis, I am writing this letter with the heaviest heart, filled with a pain that rivals your own, perhaps even surpasses it. For in your grief, you still hold a belief in the man you loved. I know this will shatter your world, as it has shattered mine. My name is Abigail Gray. For the past 10 years, your husband, Daniel, was my lover. And he was the father of my son, Ethan. Claire felt the blood drain from her face. Lover, father, son. The words were a grotesque mockery of her sacred marriage vows. She wanted to scream, to rip the letter to shreds, to deny the sickening truth it unveiled. It had to be a lie, a cruel, sadistic joke. Abigail described Daniel as loving, attentive, yet constantly consumed by business trips that took him away for weeks at a time. He had promised her marriage, a future together, a life free from the constraints of his failing first marriage. He had spoken of Claire, painted her as a cold, distant woman, a ghost of a wife he was soon to leave. Abigail claimed she had believed him, believed in their love, in his promises. She had only learned of his true death, his death to Claire, days before, when she saw his obituary online. That's when she discovered he hadn't left Claire at all. He had simply died, and in doing so, had exposed a lie of unimaginable proportions. The letter was filled with intimate details only Daniel and Abigail could have known. Inside jokes, shared memories, specific places they'd visited. Even the story behind the dried rose, a gift from their first secret anniversary. Each detail was a searing brand, confirming the horrifying reality. The tiny sock was Ethan's, a gift from Daniel on his first birthday. Claire called Michael, her voice a strangled whisper. She made him read the letter, made him look at the photograph. Michael, usually calm and measured, exploded in a fit of rage. "This is insane, Mom. It's a trick. Dad would never. He loved you. He loved us." He hurled the photograph across the room, shattering the frame. But even in their shared denial, the tiny sock, the faded rose, the too real photograph, and the chillingly accurate details whispered of a truth too devastating to ignore. The man she had buried, the man she had eulogized, was not the man she thought he was. He was a stranger, a ghost from a life she never knew he lived. And her world, her entire, perfect world, had just imploded. Chapter 2: The Digital Breadcrumbs. The initial shock and raw fury slowly congealed into a cold, hard resolve. Claire was a woman of logic, of evidence. Despite her profound emotional devastation, she needed answers. She needed proof. This couldn't be true. It simply could not be. She sought counsel from her best friend, Sarah, a no-nonsense retired lawyer. Sarah, initially as outraged as Michael, read the letter and examined the evidence with a detached, professional eye. "Claire," she said, her voice gentle, "the details in this letter, they're too specific to be fabricated by a random lunatic. And this photograph, I'm so sorry, my dear, but it looks real." Sarah urged Claire to hire a private investigator. "You need facts, Claire. Undeniable proof. For your own sanity." Claire reluctantly agreed. Detective Roberts, a taciturn man with a reputation for discretion, took the case. He began his investigation, focusing on Daniel's business trips and any financial anomalies. Within days, Roberts's findings began to corroborate Abigail's story. Daniel Davis, under his own name, had indeed purchased a small property in a remote town in Montana. A small, unassuming cabin nestled deep in the mountains. He had maintained a separate, meticulously managed bank account there, one Claire had never known about. He frequently used a specific, obscure credit card, one that Roberts tracked to small businesses and cafes in that Montana town. Then came the clincher. Roberts found a second phone, a burner phone, hidden in a secret compartment of Daniel's old briefcase. The call logs were damning. Frequent, long calls to a number in Montana, listed under Abigail Gray. Texts, too, filled with endearments and promises. The undeniable evidence piled up, crushing Claire beneath its weight. Daniel's betrayal wasn't just a fleeting mistake. It was a decade-long, meticulously constructed lie. One sleepless night, driven by a desperate urge to understand why, Claire found herself drawn to Daniel's old laptop. He had always been technologically savvy, meticulous about his digital files. She remembered him mentioning a private project he was working on, always password protected. She tried every password she could think of. Their anniversary, Michael's birthday, his old pet's name. Nothing. Then, on a whim, she tried Abigail's name, combined with the year of the child's birth. The screen unlocked. A hidden folder, labeled Unsent Confessions. Inside, a single file, a digital diary, Daniel's diary. He had written it, not in a physical book, but on his computer, a secret chronicle of his double life. Claire clicked on it, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and a perverse need to know. The first entry was from 10 years ago, almost to the day. August 15th, 2014. I met her today, Abigail, in Whitefish, Montana. She's like a breath of fresh air, wild, free, passionate, everything I didn't know I was missing. Claire, she's a good woman, a wonderful wife, but we've grown apart. We're roommates, friends, not lovers anymore. Abigail ignites something in me I thought was long dead. This is wrong, so wrong, but I can't stop. I just can't. The diary chronicled his descent into deceit. He described the constant travel to Montana, ostensibly for business trips to visit his ailing father, a partial truth, as his father did live in Montana and was ill, but it was primarily a convenient cover. He spoke of his profound love for Abigail, a love that seemed to burn with a desperate intensity, a passion he felt had withered in his marriage to Claire. And then, the ultimate betrayal, Ethan, their son. March 20th, 2019, Ethan. He's 5 today, my boy. He's so smart, so curious. He has my eyes, Abigail says. Every time I hold him, I feel a pang of guilt that tears me in two. How can I love 2 families? How can I live this lie? I tell Abigail I'm working on the divorce, that it's complicated. She believes me. She's so trusting. And Claire believes me when I say I'm working late. I'm a monster, but I'm also a father and a lover. I'm trapped. There's no way out. He wrote of the crushing financial burden, the endless juggling of 2 households, the constant terror of discovery. He had been borrowing money, taking out loans, siphoning funds from their joint accounts, all to maintain the elaborate charade. The truth was worse than Claire could have imagined. Robert hadn't just betrayed her emotionally. He had jeopardized their financial security, their future. June 1st, 2024. The pressure is unbearable. I can feel my heart protesting. Chest pains, dizziness. This double life is killing me slowly. I'm a coward. I should have chosen. I should have confessed. But I can't bear to hurt either of them, to shatter their worlds. I just keep hoping it will all work out, or that I'll simply disappear. His last entry, made just days before his sudden death, was a chilling testament to his profound despair. He had known his time was short. He had chosen death over revelation, leaving behind a bomb that would detonate after he was gone. He had not sent Abigail's letter. He had left it for Claire to find, the ultimate act of posthumous cowardice, a final, brutal truth bomb. Claire closed the laptop, her hands shaking, her world reduced to ashes. The man she had loved, the man she had buried, was not a ghost. He was a phantom, a living, breathing lie. The perfect man she thought she knew was a stranger, a deceiver. And now she had to face the other woman, the woman who, like her, had been loved, used, and ultimately betrayed by the same man. Chapter 3. Confrontation in Montana. The revelation of Daniel's digital diary, the chilling confession of his double life, brought a new wave of shock to Michael. His father, his hero, was a stranger. The anger, initially directed at Abigail, now turned into a bitter, cold fury towards Daniel. "He didn't just lie to you, Mom," Michael said, his voice raw with pain. "He lied to me. My whole life was a lie." Claire, despite her own profound hurt, felt a strange sense of empathy for the man who had caused her so much pain. He hadn't been a callous monster. He had been a deeply flawed, desperately trapped man. Too cowardly to face the consequences of his own choices, he had loved them both in his own twisted way, but his fear had consumed him, leading him to a path of devastating deceit. The decision was made. Claire and Michael would go to Montana. They had to. They had to meet Abigail, to see Ethan, to confront the other half of Daniel's life. The plane ride was filled with a tense silence, each lost in their own thoughts of betrayal and the looming, agonizing confrontation. Whitefish, Montana, was a picturesque town nestled amidst towering peaks, a stark contrast to the betrayal that had unfolded within its quiet beauty. They found Abigail Gray's address, a small, charming house on the edge of town, surrounded by a vibrant garden. Claire's heart hammered against her ribs as she walked up the stone path, Michael beside her, his face grim. She knocked on the door. A woman with fiery auburn hair and kind, tired eyes answered. It was Abigail. She looked exactly like the woman in the photograph, though etched with a decade more of life, and, Claire now knew, a decade of hidden pain. Abigail's eyes widened in recognition. A flash of fear, then a flicker of desperate hope. "Mrs. Davis," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You came." The initial exchange was a maelstrom of raw emotion. Accusations, tears, disbelief. Claire, her voice hoarse with pain, confronted Abigail with Daniel's digital diary, with the proof of his intricate web of lies. "He told me he was going to leave her," Abigail cried, her voice cracking. "He promised me. He said you were just a formality." Claire's anger flared. "A formality? We were married for 35 years. He built a life with me. He was my husband." Michael, stepping forward, his voice cold, added, "And he was my father. He lied to all of us. He lied about everything." Amidst the chaos, a small boy with bright, curious eyes, Daniel's eyes, peeked out from behind Abigail's leg. Ethan. The sight of him, an innocent victim of his father's deceit, silenced them all. He was a living, breathing testament to Daniel's double life, a poignant echo of the man they had both loved. Abigail, seeing the evidence, finally broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. The illusion she had lived under for a decade shattered around her. Daniel wasn't just her busy, loving partner. He was a deceiver, a man who had manipulated them both, stringing them along with false promises. He hadn't been on business trips to distant cities. He had been living another life with another family. With Claire, it was a devastating, agonizing collision of worlds. Two families brought together by one man's profound betrayal. The rivalry, the anger, the bitter jealousy that Claire had initially felt towards Abigail slowly began to transform into something else, a shared understanding, a profound, painful empathy for a fellow victim. They were both broken, both betrayed, both left to pick up the pieces of a life that was nothing more than a carefully constructed lie. Chapter 4. The Shared Wreckage. The immediate aftermath of the confrontation was a chaotic blur of lawyers, financial advisors, and police reports. Daniel's financial affairs were a catastrophic mess. He had emptied shared accounts, taken out massive loans in both his and Abigail's names, invested in dubious schemes, all in a desperate, futile attempt to maintain his two lives. He was financially ruined, leaving both women with a mountain of debt and a minimal, if any, inheritance. The news of the scandal spread like wildfire in both San Francisco and Whitefish, creating a humiliating public spectacle for both Claire and Abigail. But amidst the shame and the anger, a strange, unexpected alliance began to form between the two women. They were united by their shared pain, by their common enemy, Daniel's deceit. They met frequently, often with their respective lawyers present, dissecting Daniel's life, piecing together the intricate puzzle of his deception. Claire discovered that Daniel had told Abigail stories of Claire's extravagance and coldness, justifying his emotional distance. Abigail, in turn, confessed that Daniel had always found ways to justify his constant travel, his vague answers, his occasional moodiness. He had been a master manipulator, a brilliant storyteller, weaving a web of lies that ensnared everyone he loved. Michael, initially consumed by rage, now found a strange, protective bond with Ethan. He saw in the young boy an innocent victim, a mirror of his own shattered innocence. He spent time with Ethan, playing games, talking about his father, trying to navigate the complexities of their new, unconventional family. Ethan, too young to fully grasp the betrayal, clung to the simple fact that he had a half-brother, a new connection to his father. Claire and Abigail, two women who should have been rivals, found themselves leaning on each other. They shared stories of Daniel, not just of his deception, but also of the man they had loved, his charm, his intelligence, his flaws. They realized that Daniel himself had been a deeply conflicted, broken man, trapped in a cage of his own making, too cowardly to escape. His death, in a perverse way, had finally brought the truth to light, freeing them all from his elaborate charade. The anger was still there, a simmering undercurrent, but it was now directed at the deceit itself, not at each other. They were both survivors. They were both fighting for their dignity, for their children's futures, for a semblance of peace amidst the wreckage. Claire, once meticulous and organized, found herself embracing a new kind of chaos, a new kind of freedom. The perfect wife image she had lived under for so long had been brutally stripped away, but in its place, a stronger, more resilient woman emerged. She started seeing a therapist, Dr. Evelyn Morrison, who helped her navigate the complex layers of grief, betrayal, and unexpected acceptance. Forgiveness, Claire, Dr. Morrison had said gently, isn't about condoning what Daniel did. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of his actions. It's about choosing your own peace. Claire wasn't sure she could forgive Daniel. Not yet. Maybe never. But she could, she realized, forgive herself for being deceived. And she could find a path forward, a new life, built on truth, not illusion. Chapter 5. The Unsent Confession. The legal battle was long and grueling. Daniel's estate was declared largely insolvent, his assets insufficient to cover his debts. What little remained was divided to ensure Ethan, as Daniel's biological son, received some form of inheritance, however meager. It was a painful, public unwinding of a life built on lies. Claire, with Sarah's legal assistance, navigated the complexities with a newfound resolve. She had to protect Michael, and now, in a strange, unexpected way, she felt compelled to protect Ethan too. He was innocent. He was Daniel's son. She didn't want him to carry the burden of his father's sins. The relationship between Claire and Abigail remained complex, a fragile truce born of shared pain. They were not friends, not in the traditional sense, but they were no longer enemies. They were survivors, united by a common history that neither of them would have chosen. They consulted each other on legal matters, shared updates on their children, and sometimes simply talked. Two women understanding a betrayal that no one else could truly comprehend. Michael, though still deeply hurt by his father's actions, found a surprising solace in his connection with Ethan. He often visited Abigail and Ethan in Montana, spending time with his half-brother, coaching his little league team, teaching him to fish, sharing stories about Daniel, carefully edited to omit the painful truths too complex for a young boy. He was giving Ethan the father figure Daniel had failed to be, and in doing so, he was healing his own wounds. Claire, after much deliberation, decided to sell the large San Francisco home she had shared with Daniel. It felt tainted, a monument to a beautiful lie. She bought a smaller, sunnier condo with a view of the bay, a space that felt like a fresh start, a clean slate. She reconnected with old friends, joined a book club, and even started taking painting classes, something she had always put off. She was reclaiming her life, rebuilding it brick by brick, on a foundation of honesty and self-discovery. A letter from Abigail, the unsent confession, which had initially brought such devastation, now lay in Claire's memory box, not as a symbol of hatred, but as a poignant reminder of the fragility of truth, the complexity of human hearts, and the unexpected paths to understanding. It was the catalyst that had shattered her illusions, but also the key that had unlocked a new, more authentic life. Claire never truly forgave Daniel for his monumental betrayal. The pain of it would always be a part of her story. But she began to understand. She saw him not as the perfect, ideal husband, but as a deeply flawed, tormented man caught in a trap of his own making, unable to escape the web of his own lies. She understood that his death, in a twisted way, had been an act of desperate escape, and in revealing his truth, had inadvertently set them all free. The rage she initially felt had subsided, replaced by a quiet, reflective acceptance. She no longer felt like a victim. She was a survivor. She had faced the most profound betrayal imaginable, and had emerged not unscathed, but stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. Chapter 6. A New Tapestry. Months turned into years. The wounds, slowly, painfully, began to heal. Claire found a rhythm in her new life, a serenity born from stripping away the layers of illusion. She made peace with the fact that her marriage, while built on a foundation of deceit, also contained genuine moments of love and happiness. Daniel, for all his flaws, had been a part of her life for so long, a complex figure who had brought her both joy and unimaginable pain. The unexpected connection with Abigail and Ethan continued to evolve. They had become an unconventional, extended family, bound by a shared, traumatic history. Claire continued to support Ethan, both emotionally and, to the extent she could, financially, ensuring he had opportunities that Daniel's financial recklessness had jeopardized. She saw flashes of Daniel's brilliance in Ethan's curious mind, and glimpses of Abigail's warmth in his kind spirit. Michael, having processed his own complex emotions, formed a strong bond with Ethan. He became a steady presence in the boy's life, a loving older brother and a surrogate father figure, filling a void that Daniel had left. He often visited Ethan in Montana, bringing him gifts, coaching his sports teams, and offering guidance. Abigail, too, found a path to healing. The truth, though devastating, had liberated her from Daniel's false promises. She continued her art, pouring her raw emotions into her work, creating powerful, cathartic pieces that spoke of loss, betrayal, and resilience. She found a new strength, a fierce independence that allowed her to build a stable, honest life for herself and Ethan, free from the shadow of Daniel's deceit. The two women, Claire and Abigail, never fully became friends in the conventional sense. The depth of the original wound, The complexity of their shared past made such a relationship impossible. But they forged a unique bond, a respectful coexistence built on mutual understanding and a shared commitment to the innocent boy caught in the crossfire of their history. They were two sides of the same coin, two women who had loved the same man and had both been shattered by his lies. They had both survived. Claire, sitting in her new bright condo overlooking the bay, often reflected on the unsent confession. The letter, once a symbol of betrayal, now represented the moment truth had burst into her life, painful but ultimately liberating. It had forced her to confront uncomfortable realities, to dismantle her illusions, and to rebuild her life on a foundation of authenticity. She thought of Daniel, not with the idealized love of the past, nor with the consuming rage of the initial discovery, but with a complex mix of sorrow, pity, and a profound, if bitter, understanding. He had been a man tormented, caught between two lives, unable to choose, unable to be honest. His death had been a tragic, final act of avoidance, but also, for those he left behind, an unwitting catalyst for truth. Chapter 7. The True Inheritance. The journey of Claire Davis, from grieving widow to bewildered victim, and finally to a woman of quiet strength, was a testament to the human spirit's capacity for resilience. She had faced the ultimate betrayal and emerged, not broken, but transformed. The legacy Daniel left behind was not one of wealth, but of complexity. He left behind a shattered past, but also an unexpected future. A future where two women, once strangers, then rivals, now shared a silent understanding. A future where a young boy found not one, but two families who loved him, even if the circumstances were born of profound deceit. Claire found herself embracing life with a renewed vigor. She learned to forgive herself for the blindness, for the years she had lived in an illusion. She understood now that true love wasn't about perfection. It was about honesty, even when it was painful. And that real strength lay not in maintaining a facade, but in tearing it down and rebuilding something genuine from the rubble. Her final inheritance from Daniel was not financial. It was the truth, the brutal, agonizing, but ultimately liberating truth. It had stripped away her comfortable life, her cherished beliefs, but in return, it had given her a life lived with open eyes, an honest heart, and a profound connection to a family she never knew she had. The unsent confession had, in its own way, sent her on a journey of self-discovery, leading her to a stronger, more authentic version of herself. It was a painful gift, but a gift nonetheless.